one of the ways, or one of the consequences of that destruction of the nuclear family, is the occurrence of prolonged adolescence. Now, this is something I've covered on the show before, that Scientific America covered all the way back in 2017. And you can rest assured that prolonged adolescence is not only going out pace, but is way worse than it was back in 2017. But back in 2017, Scientific America declared that 18 is the new 25. And they did this by looking at things that 18-year-olds typically did from decades before, and looked at the people who were 18 in the present and whether or not they were participating in those same activities. And what Scientific America found is what we all know by common sense, that adults are becoming mature later and later in life. As they suggested back in 2017, 18 is the new 25. And perhaps today, in our present setting, 18 is the new 35. I don't know how you would quantify that exactly, or if Scientific America, who has a history of not being that scientific, is actually using the kind of metrics that we can trust in to believe that prolonged adolescence is really a bigger problem as we think it is. However, I would suggest that your own personal experience tells you that there are man babies trapped in the bodies of 35-year-olds all over this nation, and even later than that. Men that do not act mature for their age. As a result, we have created a generation of spoiled, rotten adults who, like children, when they don't get their way, they pout, they shout, they name call, and they cry, and they stamp their foot until they get their way. Which is exactly what happened to Andrew Cedra, an Australian megachurch pastor, in a Daily Mail article. The article says this: inside Australia's hateful anti-gay megachurch, young church pastor says that homosexuality will never be normal, and vile rant after launching a war on pride. Now, for those of you who do not know newspeak in the present, whenever anyone calls you hateful in the context of Christianity, you can almost always wear that as a badge of honor. Now, of course, there isn't any Christian that truly wants to be perceived as being hateful, but we have to understand what the word hateful actually means. And for that, I will show you an article that clearly expresses that what this article writer means by hateful is that Andrew Cedra just will not do what he has been coerced into doing. He will not give us what we want. Again, what this article writer is saying is just simply that I am suffering from prolonged adolescence, and he is not doing what I like, and he's not making me feel good. Therefore, he is hateful because he's not giving me what I want. Of course, the refrain of every single child that has ever existed. Now, for proof of this very fact, to help us interpret language, let's go to this article about the NHL, because the NHL just banned clubs from wearing Pride warm-up jerseys. The league commissioner, Gary Bettman, acknowledged in a new interview with Sportsnet. Now, the writer will go on to say this: congratulations, homophobes. Bettman and the NHL just gave you the biggest win you've had in sports in many years. Now, I hope you caught that, you bunch of homophobes. If you don't give us what we want, we will call you names. Let me give you the background here so that you know exactly what's going on. There have been some NHL players who have resisted being forced to wear the get-ups that the Pride community has crammed down the throats of other NHL players. And as a result of that, the NHL finally said, all right, here we're going to adopt a policy. We'll still celebrate Pride Night throughout the month of June. We're still going to do that because we don't have a backbone and we lack basic, essential courage. So we're still going to have a Pride Night because we have to pander to this sexual minority. But what we won't do is we won't force our players to wear certain get-ups. We're not going to force them to wear warm-up jerseys that are covered in basically like a glitter factory vomiting all over them. We won't force them to wear that. And the moment that there is this one small concession made, we're not going to force you to wear these clothes, people in the mainstream media, like this writer, say that you bunch of homophobes got your way. So in other words, if you don't do what we want, you're a homophobe. If you don't do what we want, you're a bigot. If you don't do what we want, we will call you names endlessly until you give us our way. What I love about this is that this is also usually accompanied by this idea that the real welcoming people are the ones who welcome all identities and are totally inclusive of everyone. They're the truly loving ones. And of course, if you happen to disagree with us, then here's what we say. Get the hell out because you have no place here and you're not welcome here. Such tolerance coming from these radical leftists. Now, this is also on display. As a result of Starbucks pulling their pride decorations nationwide, there have been multiple locations around the United States where workers have revolted and are staging a strike because of these decorations. Now, this move proves nothing other than that these employees actually care nothing about their job. Their job is not internal decorators over at Starbucks. Their job is to pour coffee. But the moment these decorations are removed, of course, that is means for a protest among these people who are absolutely serious about their job. Or, in other words, we live in a world where seemingly everyone will bend over backwards, literally, to celebrate Pride Month and coddle weak-willed narcissistic fascists who wish to shut down anybody who disagree with them. Any small bit of resistance is considered hate because these people are so used to being accommodated. To the progressive legacy media and the LGBTQ activists who are typically one and the same, they only have two jobs. That is to affirm them, and then that is to march through every single institution and promote this agenda. When one person stands up and says, no, I'm not so much going to do that. Of course, the only thing that you can do is emotional blackmail, to call them names and to call them things like hateful. Again, there's not a single Christian on the planet that wants to be known as hateful. That's not our job. In fact, we're supposed to be the most loving people in the community. But whenever there is a group of people that have been so lied to, one of the most uniquely loving things that we can do is tell them the truth. Why? Because there's nobody else in society that is going to have the backbone or the real true concern for these people to actually tell them the truth. It is incumbent upon pastors to stand up and tell them the truth, regardless of the social repercussions of it, because true love isn't necessarily interested in reputation. It's interested in these people and helping them grow up. If not simply because there is no room for LGBTQ activism in the scripture, but to show people that, hey, life is full of ups and downs and you're not always going to get your way. It may be one of the best lessons that you can learn in life. If your daddy didn't teach it to you, then let Andrew Cedra and other pastors with a backbone and a heart teach you this valuable lesson. Your way is not always the best way. And if you really want to have a society where the best ideas win, then probably coercion and shutting people down and calling them hateful names just when you don't get your way is not the best way to get there. In fact, affirmation isn't the best way to get there. Sure, affirmation is fun and it's good, but if you really want the best for people, you don't just affirm them where they're at, but you call the best out of them and you call them to more than they are right now. And that's exactly what Andrew Cedra is doing. But of course, he's being hated on by the mainstream media because they don't have the moral fortitude to actually stand up for what is right. But thankfully, pastors do. And there are more and more pastors doing it. Now, I also want to make sure to mention that there's really only one other reason that Andrew Cedra is really being pinpointed and targeted by the Daily Mail. Yes, it's because these people are so used to being given their way that they don't know what to do when they don't get their way. But it's also because, and this is an important point, Andrew Cedra is telling the truth. And when he does so, he is very effective. Now, let me break that down for you. In a society where people have this understanding of Jesus as this inoffensive and lightweight individual who is so milquetoast that would never offend anybody, it is easy to understand why people totally misperceive Christianity in the present. Most people want an inoffensive Jesus because they don't want to really reckon with a Jesus that might actually change their attitude, their behavior, and their mindset. I mean, we truly have this understanding of Jesus that he was just so incredibly, insufferably loving and kind and obnoxious wherever he went that they just had to crucify him. They just had to kill him. I mean, it's like Jim Carrey from In Living Color.
Is this line for heterosexuals only?
No.
Good, because I'm gay.
Jesus was just so annoying that we had to get rid of him. But that's not really the truth. Jesus actually got into a lot of trouble because he was willing to stand up against those who were willing to peddle lies, especially from an institutional standpoint. And telling the truth, as I said before, is one of the most radical acts of benevolence in a society that is bent so backwards that they can't even tell up from down. But most importantly, Ancur.biz is being attacked by the mainstream media because he's effective. Now, this is important for you to understand. If you stand back and as a Christian, you point your finger at Ancur.biz and you say, well, I've never been castigated as unloving or hateful. There's a way to do this where you don't come off as being hateful. I just have to tell you a couple things about that. Bedside manner is probably the weakest argument on the planet. Yes, there is a right way to do the right thing. I get it. But honestly, the right thing should be the thing that we focus on and not necessarily the medium that it comes in. If we weren't a bunch of coddled, weak-willed people who desperately need dads in our life to help us, deal with a little bit of tension and pressure, we would be able to understand that sometimes people don't present things in the best way possible. And let's just get to the truth of what's trying to be communicated, and then that might be better for all of us involved. But let me be really, really clear about something. As long as you're ineffective, as long as you stand back and don't ever enter the fray, you can point at the people in the arena and you can mock them and you can say that you can do better than them and that you have never had to deal with some of the backlash that they're dealing with because you're so much better than that individual. Or perhaps this: you've never actually really accomplished anything with your life, and therefore no one has ever had to criticize you or mock you because you've never actually accomplished anything. Now, I know this is a bitter pill to swallow, but the reality is there's a bullseye on your back when you're good at something. It is only when you stand for something that people can finally start critiquing you. If no one is critiquing you and criticizing you, it could be that you're not actually standing for anything. Well, like Christians of the past, I hope that's not true of you. Saint Athanasius said this: "If the world is against the truth, then I am against the world." Perhaps the world has gotten so much to a place where it is against Christianity that it's time for you to be willing to take some of the name calling because you are willing to actually take a stand. And it's time for you to acknowledge that if maybe you're not being called names, it could be that you're actually just not standing for anything. But the more we do, the more we can actually make a difference. And I, for one, am glad Ancur.biz is doing it. We just need more of it. Thanks so much for watching. It's all the time we have for today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and go with God. So you just got done watching a small excerpt of a much larger episode. You can find the link to that full episode down below in the description of this video. So you definitely want to check that out, because if you like that clip, you'll like the much larger episode. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click that little bell to be notified when great new episodes of Indie Thinker come your way. Thanks for watching.